Hi, I'm David Kais, and I run R for the rest of us. You may think of R as a tool for complex statistical analysis, but it's much more than that. From data visualization to efficient reporting to improving your workflow, R can do it all. On this podcast, I talk with people about how they use R in unique and creative ways. Well, I'm delighted to be joined today by Ahmadou Dicko. Ahmadou is a Senegal-based statistician who works for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. In this work, Ahmadou and his team have developed unique strategies using R to manage, analyze, and communicate with data. In this conversation, I'll ask Ahmadou about his work, and he'll give me a walkthrough of some of the packages that he and his team have created to facilitate their work with humanitarian data. Ahmadou, welcome and thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. I'm really thrilled to be part of this podcast, particularly talking to you about humanitarian data and what we're doing. So really excited.
Great. Well, maybe we can start out. I want to get some information about your background, and I'm curious kind of how you got into R, but maybe actually starting out, if you don't mind just giving an overview of the type of work that you do today. Kind of what does your daily use of R look like?
Thank you. Very good question. As you said, I'm a statistician working from UNHCR, so the High Commissioner for Refugees. So we are basically working on forced displacement, and I'm working from what we call a regional bureau. So I'm covering several countries in a specific region. In my case, I'm covering West and Central Africa. So the whole West Africa, Senegal, Mali, Burkina, and also Central Africa, all these countries like Cameroon, Central African Republic. And I think if you watch the news, there's a lot of conflict. And conflict means also a lot of forced displacement. So we are trying really to work with this population to find solution, also international protection. So we are dealing with a lot of data. And I think for the organization, statistics is not new, but definitely we have more and more new roles like data scientists, statisticians like me, and was not there back then. And I think we are really trying to push for a new way to use data to improve and be basically more efficient with it. So my role is definitely like some sort of humanitarian data scientist, so creating data product, processing information to make sure that we do proper allocation, use the data the right way. So basically a bunch of predictive models, working on our official statistics because we also run a lot of surveys. And so it involves also a lot of methodology, and I'm really a survey nerd actually, because I think getting the right data is key. So yeah, so a lot of work, really exciting work to be honest, and a lot of challenges because we are working in a really fragile situation where you don't have much, and where also it's really difficult sometimes to do a lot of things. I mentioned surveys, how to run a survey when you have conflicts around. So how all these type of challenges actually. So that's pretty much what we do usually as a statistician in the organization.
Yeah, that's great. I wonder if you could give maybe a specific example of a project that you've worked on recently, just to help kind of make it concrete for people. Because I think, when I think about the UNHCR, I think a lot about programmatic work, like going and helping people who are refugees directly. But obviously, that's not the work that you are directly involved with. So yeah, I'm wondering if you could give me a specific example to help understand the work that you do.
Yeah, sure. We have situation where we have population of refugees that in area, for like a couple of years, even more. And I think they are in a situation where also they need help. It's not like, let's say, the onset of a crisis, but they're still in another country in need of international protection and support. One thing we did recently in Burkina Faso, where we have a lot of internally displaced people, was to run a survey that we call a result monitoring surveys, where we collect a lot of indicators actually on them and to see, like the level of well-being and understanding the needs. That's really key and important. This is like a basic household survey, but I was mentioning the challenge of doing it in an area where, you don't have access to many conflicts zone, and the rest is really fragile also, it's really complicated. But nonetheless, with my team and the work we did there, we managed with really good partners on the ground in Burkina to collect data on this population. And we are actually processing the data now. The goal will be really to create some sort of reports for the senior managers to understand exactly the dynamic of the situation, because it's not the first survey. We ran similar survey in the past to understand things improve, got worse for whatever reason, and also what can we do now to improve, because of course we also have a lot of programs that we are doing. Is it working or not? Something we start doing more and more, and I'm also really excited about this, is definitely evaluating what we are doing. We even like to push this further and efficiently use every single dollar we're using for the response. So that's one example. It's basically collecting data, analyzing data, and giving information to a senior manager to have, all the information they need to improve the life of this population. Some of them are in need of documentation. That's basically the only thing they need, to just keep. Some of them need jobs and everything, and then you have to understand also the dynamic of the local job market and everything. It means analyzing also data from the host countries. So there's like a variety of analysis you can do with the type of data we are collecting, but the idea is always pushing for definitely solution and finding a way to improve the life of these people. And maybe one of the big changes is really to also be more and more data-driven, the right way, of course, because you always have human in the loop, but at least to get insight that not be able to probably get to the past. And now with the tool we have and the capacity, we have way more information.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Great. Well, let's go back just a little bit because obviously you use R a lot now. I'm curious kind of what your introduction to R was.
Yeah. R and I think it's a long story now because I'm a statistician, as you said, basically moral statistician / econometrician, and I was doing my grad school here in Dakar back in I started in 2009. And I remember back then I was the only one using R for whatever reason. I didn't know anything about R. That was funny because I think all my colleagues and even the prof, they were just pushing for Stata, because Stata is really like widely used by economists and econometricians. And I was like really some sort of advocate for open source back then. I still run my Linux books and everything. I'm always pushing for open source. And I didn't want to have Stata because it was not like free and it was quite expensive actually. It still is, I guess. And so I was looking for something. So I played with Octave, the free version of MATLAB. I was not satisfied. And I found R. And it was like really 09. And it was funny because I didn't know R could do all of this. But I was really just pulled into this thing. And so that's how I started actually. And we didn't have much in terms of books and everything, and I was just holding on to one PDF I found online from, I think, the University of Toulouse, one prof, and the only source of information I got for like almost a year. And the prof also was not using it, so I was basically on my own. But they were cool enough to let me experiment with it. But I started, I think, 09 back then. So it's been a while, I guess, right? A little bit.
Wow. And I'm curious kind of, over the years, what have been kind of milestones or like changes in terms of how you've used R in your work life?
To be honest, I think it's going so fast, and I think you will see I still use Emacs to do R because back then we didn't have RStudio, and I'm just so used to it that I'm still using it. RStudio, first big milestone, to be honest, having like a proper IDE to play with R. Back then we had Teen R, something Rquad. It was not that good, and Emacs was probably the best, but you have to learn Emacs, which is not always easy. But this, of course, I mean, the impact of RStudio and everything, the whole ecosystem and building really the community around the Tidyverse and all these tools. I remember when I was starting, I was still thinking, should I learn ggplot? Was the new thing, or Lattice, which was like really more established with the book and everything. For whatever reason, I picked ggplot, and I don't regret because it was a really good investment. And I think the ecosystem, mostly around RStudio, they did a lot to push R to where it is here. Maybe one other thing is like RCPP. And all these packages to provide more example on how to blend C++ in R, even C. And I think I remember back then the issue with R was always, R is slow, R is very slow. People were saying this actually. And also you cannot do big data analysis with R. I don't hear many people saying this now actually, and I mean for a long time, which is really cool because I remember back then it was just the thing. And that's why I think RCPP and the tidyverse and all these packages, yeah, definitely. Of course, the community, because many of us are still using R because and thanks to the community.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you say that R was slow and couldn't handle big data because I think now, in many ways, for people coming from, say, Excel, one of the reasons that they come is because of limitations on data size in Excel. So it's interesting to hear about a time when R was on the flip side of that.
Yeah.
Um, so in your work now, I know it's not just you, and we were talking before we hit the record button about other members of your team and kind of the work that they do. So I'm curious if you can kind of give an overview of your team, what their roles are, what your collaboration in R looks like.
Yeah, thank you. I don't even know if you can say team. We are chatting on a daily basis, working together, but we are also not on the same place. They are working with UNHCR, so we are on the same organization. One is statistician, another one is what we call information manager, but more like something between data science, data visualization. And all this work on R is really with these two people. So the first one is Hisham. Hisham is a statistician working in Panama. We have a regional bureau covering the Americas. And the other person I'm working a lot with is Cedric Vidal. He's the information manager in Geneva and the go-to person for everything data visualization and the design, also GIS. He's really good with this thing and he loves R, so so that's really cool. And basically why I'm saying not a team per se, because I think it was just like something ad hoc and organic, just naturally we just found ourselves talking more and more. Oh, maybe it'd be cool if we can start working on this. I have this issue, I have the same issue. Let's do this together, right? So it was not like, let's say, our supervisors and everything saying, oh, you should work together or something from the top down. It was definitely something organic. Oh. But it's also because of many other people. For example, one colleague, Edouard Goupil, who pushed a lot for this internal R community within the organization, our chief statistician, and many people really also making sure that we have the right environment to do this type of collaboration. But yeah, I think, these two people are probably the two people I'm working the most on this type of project. Maybe I will quickly present, but it'll just be a brief presentation because I think the thing is I collaborate with them, but they are usually the expert on this thing. They know way more than I do on this.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
Well, that's really interesting that it wasn't, you weren't put together with them, by your organization. It sounds like the R users kind of found each other and found ways to collaborate, given that you're all R users and have an interest in it. So that's really interesting. Talk about, you work, of course, a lot with humanitarian data, and of course, you use R a lot. So I'm curious, why is R an effective tool for that type of work versus any other tool that people doing that work might consider using?
That's a good point. Really good question, actually. And probably be very biased because I have a little bit of strong opinion about this. But it's not really R per se. For me, it's more like open source first. So it can be Python tomorrow, it can be Julia or whatever. Even if I prefer Julia to Python, but anyway, but it can be any of these tools. Actually, I believe that the humanitarian principle, and when people think about humanitarian work, aid and everything, I think it goes well with the open source philosophy also. I was lucky enough to have always worked into the public setting. I was a researcher before being a humanitarian, so I always worked on the use of data for social good. And I was thought to myself, it makes sense to push for this community-based tool, building around, because open source is not just free. You have a community behind, you have people, they are sharing, and you have a lot of all these things that I feel like really goes hand to hand with what we do also as humanitarians. So that's the first aspect. And the second aspect, actually, as a statistician, I think R is just natural. You can do a lot, you have done the library, and of course, now in many graduate programs, people are trained in R. So it's much easier also to find other people using it and to collaborate with them. So yeah, now it's much easier. Back then it was more complicated, and I think we are still pushing to have R having like a more prominent role in the humanitarian data world. Actually, I see more and more, for example, lately are being pushed in the pharma. And I know the pharma industry was more like SaaS, it's still SaaS to be honest, but I see like more push, and I think I would love the humanitarian world also to be the same. And I think we are just trying to showcase what we can do, because the best way to show that the tool is working and you can do the work is definitely with, okay, this is the tool I built, this is what I can do, this type of report, this type of analysis. So in terms of just capacity, flexibility, and what you can do, it's just limitless, right? It's just like your imagination, your own time, and also surrounding yourself with people that have different skills that can support and help you, and also with the same passion. And that's probably the hardest, finding the right person to work with. You're gonna do everything by your own. And as a humanitarian data worker, we don't control too much our agenda. I can talk to you now and then call me tomorrow and say, oh, there's this thing, you have to go to this country, and that's it. So the small amount of time we have to work on this thing, I think having really dedicated people passionate about it is really key. And that's why also I think I was lucky enough to have worked with a lot of colleagues in the humanitarian data space, really good in R, and also using it to make a difference on the field. And in terms of capacity, building on top of all these nice tools from the tidyverse in terms of data manipulation, data viz with ggplot and all these tools, but also all sort of analysis from classical stat, machine learning, econometrics, you name it, you have everything in R. So I feel like R is really a really nice tool. And to date, we have so many courses, books, everything, and a very large community. Maybe the one thing that is a little bit missing or not is like for us, by us, I mean usually a classical humanitarian organization, UN or not, or an NGO, they would rather have a contract with someone rather than, this is probably the same for a company, also a private company. So having like more companies like our studio in France, Think R, and even what you're doing, with the consulting work and everything, it is key, because then you have someone that can, you can call if something is not working. And I think probably need more and more people around, and also pushing to work with humanitarians. I think that would probably be also one of the changes, because people like myself, really passionate is one thing, but that's at some point you need to sign a contract, you need to talk to senior management, they need to put us on resources and everything. And that's probably also where I feel like there is something that can be done to just be at the next level, have maybe way more people using it.
That makes a lot of sense. Just out of curiosity, what other data tools are you seeing? I mean, you mentioned, for example, in pharma, there's a pretty strong push to move to R from SaaS, I think you said, in that industry. In the humanitarian data space, what are the main tools that you see people using?
Excel. Excel is king. And I think, and I'm not really an Excel basher, to be honest. I use it to look at the data, to do things here and there, not real analysis, but I think it's just everywhere. And when you install your machine, at least work machine, you have Excel. So when you think about humanitarian, someone they can send like after an earthquake somewhere with just his laptop and everything. So having good Excel skills is really like, something key. But Excel and GIS, we do a lot of mapping, a lot. And so you have like Esri, all the Esri things, because of legacy and everything. I would say it's biased. It is my own opinion. It's not really my organization or whatever. For example, I'll push for QGIS because it's open source and it's really, really good now. It's not what it used to be back then compared to RGIS. But Excel, RGIS, and then now all the BI tools. Power BI heavily used in some organizations. Can be some others are using Tableau. For example, WFP, they use a lot of Tableau. For us, it's Power BI. And it has changed the game, to be honest, because I remember and now what it is now. Back then, to do a dashboard, it was more static dashboard, and it was mostly with Adobe tools like Illustrator and stuff like this. You take your time to design your document. I think people still do this for some documents, but now it's much easier with Tableau and Power BI. So Excel, Power BI, Tableau. One of these GIS tools, either QGIS or RGS, probably the main tools for humanitarian data people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Well, I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about some of the work that you've done. So you and your team have developed several packages to work with data from various sources that are, I think, relevant to working with humanitarian data. You've built one to work with Kobo, and one to work with UNHCR data, and another package to work with Humanitarian Exchange platform data. Can you just talk about the kind of motivation to make those packages? Where did that come from? What have the packages done since you've made them?
Yeah, thanks. I usually develop to solve my own problem, usually not all the time. Sometimes I also like to collaborate with people if they come with the issue and I find it exciting, I work with them. But most of the time, I do things just to solve something because frustrating for me. And robotoolbox is basically the go-to tools to do data collection for humanitarian worker. So basically, you have a server where you host your survey, and you have clients, and it can even be on your phone, working offline and everything. It's really widely used in the humanitarian community, and not just UNHCR, but many other agencies. So we expect usually people in that space to know a little bit about robotoolbox, but when you collect the data, then the data is on Excel on the server. I have my report, I do my survey, I ask the question to people, and then the data go to the server. And then I have to go there every time I download. I put it in a folder and I do my analysis. Well, it's not really like an ideal setup for me, and I wanted something really like faster in terms of just refresh and, for example, building pipelines and everything. And luckily enough, I think they were also like working on some sort of API, a new version of the API, the version 2, which was like really an upgrade compared to the first version. But we didn't have much. I don't remember really an R package using the V2 when I started working on this. So I said, well, why not just wrapping this? And to be honest, I was highly influenced by our OpenSci. I really love the work they are doing. I forgot to mention them when I mentioned like game changer in our community. I think our OpenSci pushing for reproducibility and all these packages to access data is like something that's really resonated a lot with me. So yeah, I was the first one package called RUODK on our website, and ODK is like basically like Kobo Toolbox, more or less. Kobo is some sort of fork of ODK. So I was saying, wow, this is really cool what they did actually, and I was really impressed. And so when I had the opportunity, I said, yeah, why not working on this? But I really took my time. It was really slow, like one Friday at a time, one commit at a time until it was like really usable, and I just pushed it to crack. But I'm using it really on a daily basis. It's really, really super useful, and I'm really happy to see that also other colleagues, even outside of UNHCR, in my own community, are using it. And it's funny because there's a lot of silent users. You don't even know how many people are using your packages usually. You just know when it's not working, you have an issue, or sometimes people say, hi, oh, I'm using it, it's really cool. But most of the time, you are surprised when people say, oh, I used it. But I find it really useful for my line of work. I can do a parameterized report with it. And yeah, really helpful.
Well, I would say I was almost a silent user. I was working with a client recently. She works for an NGO called Everyday Peace Indicators, and they had done surveys. They do post-conflict surveys in countries where there's been war, and so they did some surveys in Colombia and Sri Lanka using Kobo to collect the data. And I said, I think there's a package. I've heard of this package. I've never used it, and I was trying to get us to use it. It didn't actually work out because they needed to do a bunch of things with the translation after the data came in. I don't know. Maybe there are ways to do that built into Kobo Toolbox, but given our time frame, we weren't. It didn't make sense to use it. But that's how I came across it recently.
Oh, that's nice.
And it looked like a great package. So just overall, I mean, it seems like I've used, for example, there's a Qualtrics package to access data, or Google Sheets 4, I think of kind of in a similar vein, where you have data that lives in some source, and then as opposed to going and downloading the data, you can just access it directly. It sounds like Kobo, your package, our Kobo Toolbox, is that exact same thing for Kobo. Is that right?
Exactly. That's the exact same thing. And then after that, you just put your design decision here and there. But that's exactly it, actually. Qualtrics is a good example. But for Google, I was not familiar with it, actually. So I'll probably look it up. But yeah, Qualtrics is a really good example, actually, the way they did it. But we don't use Qualtrics, so I didn't really
Right.
play
I mean,
with
I know
it.
it's expensive. Yeah, and I don't know offline, how much it
Yeah,
works offline. Obviously, you have specific needs in terms of the places where you're doing surveys.
exactly.
Great. Well, maybe if you don't mind putting your screen up, I'd love to have you kind of give a walkthrough of what it looks like. And actually, I will say this, I've never seen someone work in Emacs, so this will be the first time that I see that. So I may actually start out by asking you some questions about how that works.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep,
Okay, good.
can see it now.
And I think you mentioned rhdx, which was the you mentioned data platform. It's basically the go-to platform where we go to collect data. It was also one of the first package actually I think I developed. But I didn't push this one to CRAN because I think I was working with them back then and they have a really good team. They also really changed the game in the human data space. Really changed the game and are still doing an amazing work. And I think one thing we go to find there usually is like layers. Let's say I want the admin boundaries of Côte d'Ivoire. They won the African Cup of Nations, right? So let's see. Côte d'Ivoire.
So we'll give them special dispensation.
Exactly. So that basically, usually when you go there, you have something like this, right? And then you can come and you download the data and play with it. So the idea of the rgex package, quickly show here, rhdx package. It's also based on SICAN, so there is a lot of work done in that space. So I already set it up and I want to pull this data. Cool. So I will do pull dataset and I can just put the name of the dataset, this one, and you have a dataset object. And the dataset object is basically like this page. Boom. So you can now pull this file and the file in the, let's say the jargon, the way they speak in SICAN is a resource. So I will get the second resources, get resource number 2. Boom. And resource number 2 is a geodatabase, and I have a lot of layers in it. I want to know which layers. Let's say I want the admin 2. So let me find the name of the layers first, right? And this is the name of the layers. Cool. So I will just find admin 2. Admin 2 is here. I copy, and I can just come here, do read resources, layer, equal, and I put the layer I want. And it's using the SF package for everything spatial. So I will load the SF package, and that's pretty much it. And I have a spatial polygon. I can just put Côte d'Ivoire and admin 2, and of course I will load the tidyverse because I want to use ggplot and maybe something else. And I can look it up again. That's it. All right, so I can do a map now. ggplot. I don't even need this actually. geomsf. All right, and that's it. I have a map. Now, one other package that we developed that is also related to visualization is UNHCR team. So UNHCR team, this one, and you see Cedric is the main author, is basically how to follow our guidelines on data visualization and make sure that we have the same recommendation translated into ggplot. So it's basically something related to branding. I think you are doing a lot of work in that space. I can see from the report that you have on your page and everything. So the idea here is the same. Is definitely to have like UNHCR branded charts. So when you have it, you just do temp UNHCR, and since it's a map, I don't want the grid and the axis. Okay, this is more like a little bit our style, but we are still working on a mapping style guide. And this is, I mean, when you have the chance to chat with Cedric, probably go deeper into this. So you see in few lines of code, I can just do a map and play with it and do manipulation, join and whatever, and then share it. And that's the beauty of R. To be honest, back then you have to go on HDX, download it, open it on QGIS or ArcGIS, and do something else just to have just a quick overview. So that's one thing. So that's our HDX. And there's also one package I didn't mention is ACLED. it's a project, like a / research project NGO working on conflict, and widely used is like the go-to tools if you want to follow real-time conflict. And I think with this package, created just a small interface, which is a small function. If I want to have a sense of all the conflict, for example, in Côte d'Ivoire, I put Côte d'Ivoire. I hope I don't have an issue. And let me check the structure of the data. That's it. And what I can do actually is, okay, I think I have latitude and longitude. I can put it in this map just for fun. Let's see.
So this package is showing conflicts that have occurred,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's based on this project, ACLED, which is really, really useful if you want to know just more about like conflict all over the place. Is definitely the go-to place. They have really nice analysis and everything, and also a way to export the data. They have an API. They're building a lot of nice tool actually, even a prediction tool for conflict. And yeah, so the name is ACLED. Yeah, really cool. So the armed conflict location and event data project is really, really, really useful for my line of work because I'm working on forced displacement. So conflict is really one of the reasons why people are leaving where the habitual place of residence. So here, just to make it fast, I can just transform this one. I will just take, let's say, 2023 data. Let me see. I think I still have plenty of data in 2023. All right, it's fine. Okay, let's do this. I do this, and I will turn it into a SF object. SF coordinate. I think it's longitude, latitude, and the projection. Geographic, so no projection. So we'll call it, so I think it looks like it's working. I will call it CV, SF, and that's it. And let me see if I add it here, if it will work. CV, SF, all right. And okay, so here each point is one violent event that led to something. You also have access to the fatalities actually, so you can just do size fatalities. And but Côte d'Ivoire is really a quiet country. It's really can't compare to the rest. So if you look at the event, it might not be really what we have, for example, in a country like Mali, Burkina Faso, Ghana, and whatever. So it's really. As I said, the Coupe d'Afrique des Nations, the African Cup of Nations was really, really amazing. They did a really good job. So it was just like one example of like different packages used, together to do something, right? So ACLED, rgeounbdaries to pull the layers to do my mapping, and this one to collect conflict data, and just put all of this again. And that's why I like, the tidyverse and how expressive it is. You just put the byte and then you just put things together. SF, of course, which is a huge upgrade compared to SP, I'm sorry, I'm even speaking French, SP, RGOs and everything. So, yeah. All right. So,
well, and I think it's really amazing here. I mean, this looks pretty simple, but when you think about what you just did, if you were trying to do that, not using the packages that you have here, even just to access that data, it would be going and downloading it and figuring out what's the right one. And you can now just use that code and, go back tomorrow or next week or next month, next year, whatever, and update this, which is pretty incredible.
No, yeah, that's the main reason why we are really sticking to this type of tool, and we are pushing. We're also doing, I think, internally in the organization, we are trying to do as much training as we can to other colleagues because we have a lot of colleagues, they really want to learn about R, about Python, and we have really more and more people that really just eager to push and learn. And I think that's also what I like about your approach, the way you show R and not to frighten people. We are just like a handful of statisticians in the organization, just I don't know how many, not that many, and most of the people who are working on data don't have really that profile, and some of them are not even computer scientists.
Sure.
So but they are really excited. They have this thing they want to learn, and for me, that's the most important thing. And I strongly believe that everybody can learn this thing, even easily, if they just have this passion about, I want to learn and I want to improve the way I use the data and everything. So yeah, we are pushing to have more and more people actually using, because of what you said, because I think it will save time. And I think time is key for the line of work we are doing. Less time on this means more time to do other things, or more analysis to support people in need.
Yeah, that's great. I wonder, do you have an example of using our Kobo toolbox that you could show?
I think this one...
I mean, I will say as much as, for me, selfishly, I'm just curious because, again, the project that I work on, we didn't quite use it, but I was... it looked very interesting. So
yeah, I think what I will do here is more to show first how it works, how it is in Kobo. I mentioned trainings, and this is my personal Kobo server where I have most of the surveys here, mostly tests for the package. I'm trying to make sure it covers like all the things, but and I think 1 year, I remember, we're trying to work on a training for the whole continent of Africa. So it was me and two statisticians. Now they are no longer in our bureau in Africa, because in Africa we have 3 bureaus. We have my bureau covering West and Central Africa. We have 1 bureau covering East and Horn of Africa. And we have 1 bureau in the southern part of the continent covering, South Africa, basically. So Africa is split in 3 bureaus. So we decided to join forces and say, okay, let's do a training on R. And before doing this training, for all UNHCR colleagues working in Africa, we sent this survey, basically, on capacity building. And if you look at the form, this is how, I think, you already opened Kobo, so you have an idea of how it looks. So this is the web form. This is not the form if you use the phone, but if you use your browser to fill the form, that's something you have. So where do you work? Which area do you work for? So we have like information manager, operational data management, and stuff like this. And which option best describe your knowledge of I don't have any knowledge, I'm good, I'm advanced. And what do you love to learn? So you made really simple, like 2-3 questions to just have a sense of the people that will join the training.
Yeah.
So a basic, pre-training server or something. And the data is here actually. You can go on Kobo, download, and export to Excel and download and play with it. Or you can use something like Kobo Toolbox. And the idea is basically like each survey identified by like some unique identifier, right? This is the UID.
Sure.
And this is what I will copy actually. And I can put it here. I can just parameterize my report. Boom. I can put it here. I add my title. And I will use UNHCR down. UNHCR down is here. So we are building some set of templates actually using our Markdown. So we have HTML, we have Word document, PowerPoint, Sharingan, and everything. So I will just do the HTML one, simple one. All right, and I have this. Sure. And basically here, because I want to just go step by step and then I'll run the survey after that. So the idea of getting access to your data using Kobo is first getting just your UID, and with it you can directly use the main function. The main function is Kobo data. So basically what you need to do is just to have your unique identifier, the one from the survey, and you can use, of course, the parameterized report option of our Markdown, and you can also use with Quarto. And basically, when you have it, you are set, because the way to read the data in Kobo using robotoolbox is just to plug, either plugging directly your ID in the Kobo data function or using an asset. But the easiest is definitely just to plug the UID here. So let's maybe run this and go through the code. I will show you quickly how it works. All right. Good. As you can see, when you use Kobo data, you have a data frame, and once you have a data frame, you can do whatever you want with it, right? So that part, I think it's okay. Now, what we did here, not to just write many things, is like if you see, for example, where you work, which country, is similar to what we have in the original survey. And I actually, to pull this information, we use here var label. And I was saying that the robotoolbox package relies on the label package. And basically you have two types of label. You have label for variables and you have label for values. And here you can even play with multilingual data. I have a vignette on the show how to play with multi-language surveys, and we do a lot of surveys like this actually. Because you can work in an area where people speak Arabic, some others speak English, and so on. So you have to make sure that you can switch. And the package is also meant to work also that way. Basically, you have a lang option on the Kobo data, and then you can just switch the language. You can also use the Kobo lang to check the available language, and that's it. And then you can switch on and off between the values and the label using the label package. You can also access the variable label. For example, this one, what's your name? In French, quel est votre nom? And so on. And I didn't invent anything. I just use the label package because I think it's kind of a standard now. The Haven package is using label under the hood to pull data from SPSS data and whatever, right? So I'm just doing the same thing because I think it fits. And that's also one thing behind this package is like when something is working well elsewhere, I don't try to just invent it. I just use it as a dependency. Same for the DM package. You have like really complex surveys where you repeat question and then you have like multiple tables, but they are linked. So basically in Kobo, when you use Kobo data out of it, you don't have one data frame, but you have a list of data frames linked through the DM package. And then you can play with everything that is available on the DM package to filter automatically the data, automatically join the data and everything. So, and I think I like the idea of relying on really this type of strong packages instead of just trying to code myself the same logic when it's working well there. So that's the thing with this package actually. But for the rest, to be honest, it's just like, well, once you have a data frame, then everything that you know about the data frame you can do. You know, here, for example, I'm playing with the data. I know where they work. They work mostly in country operation and not regional bureau like myself. And I can see from this map, joining the two data, this is a map from our natural earth. I see that people are mostly from Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and Ethiopia. And I even process, I think, textual data using the tidy text package. And I see the most widely used word for when they were talking about the wish list, what they want to learn and everything. And visualization, reports, analysis, data manipulation, and so on. And also, just finishing with this heat map to understand the link between how good they are in R and what position they have in the organization. I think it was quite useful for us before doing the training to just have this short report without too much text, just, visualizing the data and having like this bar chart here and there. And in terms of code, it's just like even the section are directly from the survey, and you can push further the logic and having even the text, but within this fancy thing. I know Hisham and his colleagues from Panama Edouard, they were really good at doing this type of parameterized report where everything was programmed, even like the markdown text and everything. But it was too meta for me, so I did the simple thing. So but I mean, if you have data with Kobo, please hit me up. I mean, we'll be happy to have a discussion with you and how to set it up. But it's really easy because then you have a data frame and then you can play with it.
Yeah. And I mean, it does seem like it just facilitates getting that data so easily. I mean, I think the challenge for the client that I was working with was she's based in the US, but works with some contractors who are in Sri Lanka. And the problem was they had taken the data out of Kobo and then done the translations in Excel or something else. So at that point, it didn't really make sense to access it. But yeah, I absolutely see that.
I see. Thanks, and really useful for us, actually humanitarians. And I think something I didn't mention, we have a group. I think humanitarians. I hope you not make fun of us, but we are maybe the last people on Earth still using Skype. Maybe I'm wrong. No, seriously, we try to kill Skype so many times, but we are well stuck there. So in Skype, you have like few communities of humanitarian data people from different agencies, of course.
Okay.
And we have an R group with 500 people there
Wow.
actually working for different agencies actually. And sometimes we share these things. And because Kobo is widely used by many other people, so you have a way to discuss. We tried to move to Slack, it didn't work. We tried many things. So I don't even know, but we are still stuck in Skype until Microsoft one day decided to kill it. So
yeah, hey.
Anyway, just wanted to mention it, but we have a community on Skype.
Okay, that's great. Well, this is super helpful just to see, the value of a package like this or the other packages that you showed is just that you can access that data so easily. And at that point, it's just a data frame that you can do whatever else you do with data frames. So all of the, tidyverse syntax that you're familiar with is going to work just the same with this once you bring the data in.
Yeah, and one thing usually also when we talk to people, they say, oh, you look at this figure, we can pull this from R quite easily. You can reproduce this report. That's why also we are trying to push. Maybe one last package I didn't show is like the refugees package. And basically, if you are working on a report involving official statistics from UNHCR, usually shared in this platform we call Refugee Data Finder, then you have the same data in this package actually. And it's a pure data package, so we don't pull something from an API because it just doesn't need that refresh. The data is refreshed officially twice a year. Mm-hmm. And you have the data is a nice format, then you can play with it to do some sort of analysis, doing some reporting and everything. So just wanted to mention that one because it's also quite useful. And I think usually journalists are asking and using for this type of because it's like official statistics. We have 110 million possibly displaced in the world. So they want now to go deep dive in it and understand a little bit this official statistics. So this package is also quite useful. And I think Isham is the main author of the package. So
yeah. Great. Well, that's great. We'll list all of those packages in the show notes. So if people want to check them out, they can definitely do that.
Okay.
Great. Well, that was really useful. Super interesting to see how you use it. If you want, you can actually stop sharing at this, unless there's anything else you wanted to share at this point.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay.
I can go on for a long time, but I don't want to. I'm really excited about humanitarian data science.
Yeah, I can tell.
This type of things, and I think we are just scratching the surface of it.
Yeah, of course.
We are so behind, and we are also looking what other people are doing in other industries. That's why I also are looking a lot of your work, your reports, the parameterized report, and your work on branding. This is just definitely what we need. When I look at your PGS work and all this report, this is just what our senior managers want.
Yeah.
And that's why people are investing, within Adobe tool and all these tools to just have this report. And if you can do it from R, they don't really care too much because for them it's the end product. Right. And I think you can save a lot of time and money actually if you invest in this tool. And in terms of quality, reproducibility, having less error because it's less cookies. Passing that, yes. So I see tons of benefit actually of switching and pushing people, but it comes with we need to do a lot of trainings, building, making sure that, and that's the thing. But I think it's a good investment.
Well, and what we always tell people too is if you're just going to make one report, it's not worth doing it in R. But if you're doing any kind of parameterized reporting where you're going to make dozens or hundreds of reports, you don't want to do that by hand in Illustrator or InDesign or whatever. So at that point, that's when it makes sense to invest in something like the type of work that we do. Yeah. Great. Well, Ahmadou, thank you very much for coming on, for talking about how you use R in general and doing the walkthrough. It was really, really useful. So thank you for joining us.
No, really, thank you for having me. It was really a blast chatting with you, and really keep pushing, continue doing what you are doing. Your book on learning R, I think I remember many friends from the humanitarian community sharing this book with me personally, saying this is amazing, this is a good thing for them. And so we're talking before starting about silent user. There's a lot of people also silently using a lot of the good stuff you are doing and what you are sharing in the community. And I think I can see a lot of things that are similar to what we do in the humanitarian world, and I hope you will continue to push and do also this type of work. I can see a lot of values. I hope we'll continue discussion, and because I see really that it will benefit us as humanitarian a lot, the work you're doing. So thanks, David. I think it was really cool. And and hit me up if you are dealing with Kobo and any type of survey tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds good. That's it for today's episode. I hope you learned something new about how you can use R. Do you know anyone else who might be interested in this episode? Please share it with them. If you're interested in learning R, check out R for the Rest of Us. We've got courses to help you no matter whether you're just starting out with R or you've got years of experience. Do you work for an organization that needs help communicating effectively with data? Check out our consulting services at rfortherestofus.com/consulting. We work with clients to make high-quality data visualization, beautiful reports made entirely with R, interactive maps, and much, much more. And before we go, one last request. Do you know anyone who's using R in a unique and creative way? We're always looking for new guests for the R for the Rest of Us podcast. If you know someone who would be a good guest, please email me at david@rfortherestofus.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.